Traveling to the past changed my life. Your mom's safe. Your mom's nice. And that's never gonna change.
Descendants, Wicked Wonderland just delivered one of the most jaw-dropping cliffhangers in the entire franchise, and fans have not stopped talking about it since the credits rolled. That final scene, Pink finding a mysterious glowing object and Chessy looking directly into the camera with that smirk, changed everything fans thought they knew about where this story was going. Will Pink actually turn villain in the next movie? Will Hazel Hook finally come face-to-face with Captain Hook in Neverland? Is that glowing object connected to the gem that Max used to corrupt Chloe? And does that mean the darkness is not over? Could the entire sixth movie be set in Neverland, with Peter Pan's world becoming the new battleground for this generation of heroes and villain kids? And is there any chance the cast comes back with something completely unexpected? A twist that makes Wicked Wonderland look like the calm before the storm? Every single one of those questions has an answer, and this breakdown covers all of them. The single most important moment in the entire ending of Descendants, Wicked Wonderland, is not the final musical number, not Maddox Hatter's defeat, and not Red and Chloe reconciling their fractured friendship. It is the quiet, almost blink-and-miss-it moment when Pink walks back into that party room, says goodbye to everyone, glances under a table, and then stops cold. The look on her face, genuinely curious, completely unexpected, says everything. Whatever that glowing object is, Pink has never seen it before, which means it did not belong to anyone in that room, and the fact that Pink chose to hide it in a heart-shaped box she shares with Red, rather than show it to anyone, is truly shocking. That is not the behavior of someone who stumbled across something harmless. That is the behavior of someone who, deep down, recognized that this object had power, and decided to keep that power for herself. For fans who have followed Pink since her introduction as Red's sweetly idealistic little sister, that small, silent decision feels genuinely terrifying. It mirrors the exact moment in Descendants 3, when Audrey Rose first touched Maleficent's scepter, the point of no return, disguised as nothing more than curiosity. However, the situation is far more complicated than it first appears, because Chessy's final words were not spoken to Pink. They were spoken directly to the audience. That distinction matters enormously. Chessy climbed onto that table, looked straight ahead, and delivered the franchise's most explicit fourth wall break yet. Oh, you didn't think that was the end of the story, did you? Of course not. That would be too sweet. The Cheshire Cat's daughter is not a passive narrator. Every fan who has followed the Alice in Wonderland mythology will know that the Cheshire Cat always knows more than it lets on, always appears at the precise moment when the story pivots in a direction no one sees coming. Chessy's involvement in that final scene is not accidental. However, unfortunately, what Chessy knows about that glowing object and what she plans to do about it is entirely unknown, and that uncertainty is exactly what makes the next chapter so dangerous for every character fans care about. The most likely explanation for what that glowing object actually is points directly toward one of the most beloved corners of the entire Disney universe. Fans watching Wicked Wonderland closely will notice that Tinkerbell is mentioned by name earlier in the film, not as a throwaway reference, but as a deliberate piece of world building that the writers clearly intended to pay off later. The evidence is clear. That glowing, sparkling quality of the object Pink found is not consistent with anything from Wonderland. Wonderland's magic in the Descendants universe has always been rooted in deep reds and purples, in playing card imagery and tea party aesthetics. What Pink found glows with a golden, shimmer-flecked light that every fan of the Peter Pan mythology will immediately recognize. The most logical conclusion is that the object under that table was Tinkerbell's dust, or something connected to Neverland's magic entirely, and if this theory proves correct, the consequences for Pink are enormous. It would mean that Pink is not just carrying a mysterious keepsake. Pink is unknowingly carrying a portal, a key, or a weapon tied to an entirely different world, one that Captain Hook's daughter, Hazel Hook, knows better than anyone else in the group. But that development raises an even more dangerous question about Hazel Hook's role in what comes next. Fans believe that Hazel has been carefully positioned across the entire runtime of Wicked Wonderland as a character with far more backstory than the film ever fully explored. She is fierce, competitive, described by every piece of official character material as someone who refuses to back down from a challenge, and yet throughout Wicked Wonderland, Hazel's full potential was never unlocked. The evidence strongly suggests that this was intentional. The trailer makes it clear that Hazel's arc was seeded, not completed. Her hook, her pirate instincts, her direct bloodline connection to one of Neverland's most iconic figures, all of that was introduced and then held back deliberately, like a promise the franchise fully intends to keep. And if Descendants 6 takes the franchise to Neverland, what the show is building toward with Hazel is something far more complex than a simple hero-villain dynamic. Hazel has never met Captain Hook in this continuity. Every fan who has followed Harry Hook's arc across Descendants 2 and 3 knows exactly how complicated the relationship between a Hook child and their infamous father can become. Harry was loyal to Uma, not to his father's legacy, and that tension between pirate blood and personal identity was one of the most compelling threads in the entire original trilogy. Hazel is the youngest Hook sibling. She has grown up knowing that her older brother and sisters, Harriet, Harry, CJ, already defined what it means to carry that name. And now, if Neverland becomes the setting of Descendants 6, Hazel walks into a world that belongs entirely to her father, a world where Captain Hook's reputation is not a backstory detail, but a living, breathing reality surrounding her at every moment. The consequences of that reunion for Hazel's identity, everything she has been told about her father, everything she has convinced herself is true, would be catastrophic. A character who has spent her entire life being the youngest Hook sibling, always in Harriet and Harry's shadow, suddenly standing in the kingdom her father rules? The weight of that moment, and what it would do to Hazel's loyalty and her choices, is exactly the kind of emotional detonation the Descendants franchise has always done best. And if that development proves correct, the consequences for Red and Chloe's rebuilt friendship are even more significant. Because Red used Chloe as bait, deliberately, strategically, without warning, and while Chloe ultimately forgave Red and broke free of Max's enchantment by the end of Wicked Wonderland, every fan who has followed Chloe's arc will understand that forgiveness is not the same as trust. The evidence suggests that the writers are aware of this distinction. The bracelet was destroyed, but the gem inside it was not. That detail, confirmed in the film's final act, was not left in place accidentally. The most likely explanation is that the gem, already shown to be capable of manufacturing villain energy from genuine emotional pain, is going to resurface. And if Pink found something connected to that same dark magic under a table at the end of Wicked Wonderland, then the question the franchise is building toward is not whether someone becomes the villain of Descendants 6. The question is who. The evidence points to Pink. However, unfortunately, if Pink turns villain while carrying Neverland magic, the threat she poses is categorically different from anything Red and Chloe have faced before. Because Pink is not an outsider, not a reformed villain kid, not someone who was already on the wrong side. Pink is Red's sister. That is the kind of betrayal the franchise has never attempted at this scale, and it is the kind of storyline that would make Descendants 6 the most emotionally devastating chapter in the entire series. The third and most electrifying theory fans are currently debating points to an angle that almost no one in the YouTube conversation has yet addressed: the connection between Maddox Hatter's defeat and an entirely unresolved loose thread involving the pocket watch. Fans watching Wicked Wonderland closely will notice that the pocket watch, the object that started everything, the time-traveling device that Red and Chloe hid in the royal vault at the very beginning of the film, is never confirmed destroyed. Maddox Hatter was stopped before he could use it to bend time to his will. But the watch itself remained in the vault, and the vault itself was compromised during the events of the film. The evidence is clear. The franchise has a pattern of treating magical objects not as problems to be solved, but as problems to be relocated. The pocket watch was relocated in The Rise of Red. It was relocated again in Wicked Wonderland. Every detail in this pattern points toward a single conclusion: the watch is still out there, still functional, and whoever finds it next will have the power to rewrite not just Wonderland but any world in the Disney universe, including Neverland. And if Chessy knows where the watch is, and if Chessy decided that it's time to start some new mischief, then what Wicked Wonderland has actually delivered in its final minutes is not a cliffhanger, it is a starting gun. While the main conflict of Descendants 6's setup dominates every conversation fans are having right now, there is another storyline quietly unfolding in the background that every fan needs to pay attention to before any official announcement drops. Pink, Liamani Segura's Red's newly created younger sister, a character who exists only because Red and Chloe altered the timeline, is the single most fascinating wildcard in the entire Descendants universe right now, and fans who have been sleeping on her arc are about to have a very rude awakening. Pink was introduced in Wicked Wonderland as the sweet counterpart to Red's Fire, the character fans were clearly meant to root for unconditionally. However, unfortunately, what Chessy revealed using the oraculum earlier in the film complicates Pink's entire existence in a way the movie never fully resolved. Pink should not exist. In the original timeline, before Red and Chloe traveled back in time and changed the Queen of Hearts' past, there was no Pink, there was only Red. That means Pink is not just a new character, Pink is a living consequence of time travel, a walking reminder that the fabric of the Descendants universe has been permanently altered, and everything about who she is and what she is capable of was written by accident. What makes this moment so painful for fans who love Pink is the realization that the glowing object she found and quietly hid away is likely the first step in an arc that leads her somewhere very dark. Liamani Segura, who plays Pink, was not subtle in a recent cast interview about where she wants her character's arc to go. Segura said explicitly that she would love to see Pink turn evil in the next movie, and the way she said it, with total confidence, as if the groundwork is already there, carries a weight that goes beyond wishful thinking. Kiara Romero, who plays Hazel Hook, immediately chimed in that she wants to meet her dad, Captain Hook, in Neverland. That is not two cast members casually dreaming out loud. That is two lead actors, in an official interview immediately after the film's premiere, describing storylines that connect directly and specifically to the clues the film left behind. What the show appears to be building toward with Pink and Hazel is a double arc, one character choosing darkness while another is pulled toward her own complicated legacy, and together, those two arcs would give Descendants 6 an emotional core, unlike anything the franchise has produced before. However, unfortunately, the more fans look at the evidence, the harder it becomes to see a version of Descendants 6 where Pink comes through the other side of that darkness unscathed, even if she ultimately finds her way back. The tragedy of Pink's situation is that she never asked to exist in this timeline, never chose to be the consequence of someone else's decision, and if that glowing object is the thing that pulls her across the line into villainy, then Red will have to reckon with the fact that the sister she loves most is a problem that Red herself created. Executive producer Suzanne Todd has confirmed, in direct response to the ending, that the glowing object Pink found was chosen deliberately from multiple options the team filmed. Todd confirmed the team had specific ideas about trajectories tied to that final scene. That is not the language of a producer protecting an unplanned cliffhanger. That is the language of a franchise that has already started designing what comes next. The show appears to be building towards something specific, a sixth film with a clearly defined magical threat, a specific world as its setting, and a cast that is ready. What makes this development even more significant is a detail that fans tracking the franchise behind the scenes will know. Gary Marsh, the former head of Disney-branded television who shepherded every Descendants film from the original through Wicked Wonderland, announced after leaving Disney that his new company is developing projects around Peter Pan and Witch Mountain. The Neverland connection to the Descendants universe is not just a fan dream, it is a creative direction that multiple people at the top of this franchise have been actively thinking about. Fans believe that the Tinkerbell mention in Wicked Wonderland, the introduction of Hazel Hook, the Squeaky and Squirmy Smee twins connecting back to Mr. Smee's role in Neverland, and that final glowing object in Pink's hands are not coincidences. They are the first frame of a picture that Descendants 6 is going to complete. After everything Wicked Wonderland has revealed, every theory, every clue, every cast interview, every producer comment about that final scene, the one question that every single fan is now focused on is the simplest and most important of all. When does Descendants 6 actually happen? The news, unfortunately, is that Disney has not officially greenlit a sixth film as of this breakdown. However, the evidence strongly suggests that an announcement is significantly closer than most fans are expecting, and the timeline that already exists for this franchise makes the case better than any speculation could. The pattern is undeniable. Descendants. The Rise of Red ended on a cliffhanger in July 2024, and Descendants, Wicked Wonderland was officially announced in February 2025, exactly 7 months later. Production on Wicked Wonderland then began in April 2025 and wrapped by June 2025, meaning the entire cycle from announcement to streaming took roughly 14 months. If that same timeline holds for Descendants 6, and there is every reason to believe it will, given how deliberately that final scene was constructed, fans could be looking at an official announcement as early as January or February 2027, and a release window of summer 2028. The franchise has never left a cliffhanger unresolved. Descendants 3 ended with a scene that directly set up The Rise of Red. The Rise of Red ended with Uma's explicit warning about the consequences of altering time. And now, Wicked Wonderland ends, with Chessy breaking the fourth wall and Pink quietly pocketing a mystery object that nobody else noticed. The pattern does not lie, and every executive producer comment and cast interview since July 17th has pointed in the same direction. Wicked Wonderland is now streaming on Disney+, which means the viewership numbers that will determine whether Disney fast-tracks a Descendants 6 greenlight are being counted right now, in real time. Every stream, every rewatch, every fan sharing the film on social media is part of the signal Disney is reading. Based on everything the production timeline and franchise history have confirmed, the wait is going to be significantly shorter than most fans are expecting. And based on what that final scene has set up with Pink, with Hazel, with Chessy, and with that mysterious glowing object now hidden away in a heart-shaped box, that wait is going to feel very long indeed. Now the conversation moves to the fans. The most important question right now is this: does the glowing object Pink found belong to Neverland, pixie dust, Tinkerbell's magic, a portal to Peter Pan's world, or is it something far darker, a surviving fragment of Max's corrupted gem, carrying the exact same villain energy that once turned Chloe against Red, and could now do the same to the one person Red trusts most? And the second question, the one splitting the Descendants fan base completely in half right now, if Pink does turn villain in Descendants 6, is this a redemption arc where she ultimately chooses her sister over the darkness, or is Pink the one who finally stays on the wrong side and forces Red to make the most devastating choice the franchise has ever asked of its hero? Drop the answer in the comments. The video on screen covers everything else fans need to know before the next Descendants announcement drops.